Okay, David, that was kind of a whistle-stop tour to some rather bizarre places, but
gay friends and flirting and
indeed.
Yeah.
The first question I want to ask you, kind of before we kind of really get to the state of the nation, is you are an economist, and as you said, you're known as being an economist, and kind of the half man, half computer thing. Could you try and maybe sum up for us what economics is actually about? Because economics, obviously, we know it's about money and how people behave around money and how money behaves around people. But what else is it about? What does economics actually do?
Wow, Jesus wept. It's
in 3 sentences.
Economics is all about. It's actually all about people. It's not actually about money at all. I remember when I did economics in school and I did it in university, and I was quite good at maths, so all that sort of stuff came. You didn't have to swot as much. I remember. If you could figure out the sums, you could just do it. And all my poor other mates were doing history and things. I had to slog and read loads of books and things. So that was one upside for me. Then when I started practicing it, and I've worked as an economist in Ireland and outside of Ireland, and then writing books, I wrote this book, The Pope's Children, a couple of years ago. And I realised when I was writing that economics is just about people. It's about us. It's about how we behave and how we react to changes in our environment. And if money's thrown into the equation, then do we react in reaction to money and whatever. But it's just really the observation of human beings. Now this comes as a big shock to people, because people try to make it too difficult and intellectual and, if I could say so, too mathematical. And that scares people away. You know, I mean, economics is about what you do every day. It's about getting up in the morning and are you going to spend your money? How are you going to spend it? How are you going to earn it? Are you going to save it? Are you going to spend it? Are you going to put it somewhere else? It really is just, it's more of a, I suspect, although academic economics believes it's a science, I think it lies somewhere between psychology and sociology.
Okay. One thing that I think is very noticeable over the last few years in Ireland is that there has been, to some extent, a kind of an apathy towards the system, for want of a better word. People feel that what's the point in doing anything? What's the point in putting yourself out there? What's the point even in voting sometimes? Mm-hmm. Because the guys at the top are all the same, that there is something rotten, if you like, inherently within the system. How did we get to that point where we just stopped bloody caring?
Well, I think the way I look at the country, and I look at it through the eyes of my children who are 7 and 9, which is a great world to get into. I advise it, if you have kids, or if you ever do, get into their heads when they're young. It's mad. It's a really good place to be. And I think that what we have is a parallel society in Ireland. And I refer to it in the new book, Follow the Money, as insiders and outsiders. And this is what annoys me greatly, and I'm very, very difficult to... I'm not a cross person by nature at all. But what I do find very disconcerting is that... I'll take the example of my friend, George Lee. Okay? George Lee and I have known each other for a long time. We were in the central bank together in the early 90s. He's a very honest man, probably the most honest man I know, given my levels of dishonesty are enormous and well known amongst my mates who'd never buy me a drink because they'd never get it back. But anyway, like George is one of these people who's a really well-intentioned person. And he left politics yesterday or the day before because he could see that it's an insider's game. That what they wanted him to do was kowtow to the system for the next 5 years, to earn his stripes. I was watching on the other TV the other night, some buffoons getting up and saying, you know, George has to bide his time. But the thing is, why? He was elected to do something, to try and do something. What we have in Ireland is a genuflection to a generation of insiders. You know, if you look through the Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael handbook, Fianna Fáil should be called FF, the family firm. Their dad was a politician and their granddad, and at the end of the day they derived their legitimacy by killing Protestants, which is what they did in the Civil War, in the War of Independence. That's where they come from, right? Now, I'm not saying they're any worse than anybody else, but it's an insider's game. And anybody I know who's gone into politics has said the transition is enormously difficult. Now, I always feel, why should it be difficult? It's difficult because inside, not only the political establishment, but also, like, you look at the banking world. AIB is probably, after Anglo, the most delinquent bank we have in terms of getting things wrong. All the same guys are there. Nobody has resigned. 2 people have resigned from AIB. Likewise, Bank of Ireland. It's an insider's club. It's like a golf club approach to things. And I know them because, in a way, I'm the oddest type of fish. I went to school with a lot of these people, okay? And I chose to swim in a different particular stream than they did, but I do know them. And what I find very disconcerting is that they don't see there's anything wrong with asking the taxpayer for 22 or 23 billion to bail out the banking system, a banking system we don't need. We could create a new banking system in the morning. So the apathy comes from consistent, I would say, mistakes made at the top. When I was younger, I thought they were mistakes. Now that I'm a wee bit older, I know they're not mistakes. They're all designed.
They're designed.
Yeah, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that at the very top in Ireland, the enrichment is so significant at the top that mistakes that look from the outsider like disastrous mistakes were actually not mistakes at all. Like, for example, the housing boom wasn't a mistake. The housing boom was engineered, designed, engineered, orchestrated, and fueled by banks and builders. Now, I remember going on prime time and saying this, as I said there in 2004. And, you were a pariah for saying that. So once you understand that there can actually be conspiracies, you don't have to be Jim Core, although his theories are quite mad. They're good, though. I suppose if I was sitting at the drums looking at Andrea's ass for 5 years, I'd come up with the same thing,
She's his sister.
I know, but I'm a weirdo.
Well, let's not go there.
No, actually, let's go there. It's much more interesting. No, but I'm just. That's a joke. But what I'm saying is that when you peel it back, you realise that these aren't mistakes. These are localised enrichment scams. And now, as happens in all countries, when things go wrong, the top of the banking system tries to extort money from the people, which is what is happening in this thing called NAMA, which will give you guys the tax bill for the mistakes of the ghost estates around Waterford County. Waterford County, I believe, is the 3rd highest proportion of empty houses in the country. Mainly down on the beaches and things.
Now, what you're suggesting is, and I think that it's an interesting an interesting scenario. We've all been aware I suppose a build-up of awareness over the last 10 years or so that the political establishment has some, shall we say, corrupt elements within it. And the bankers have been behaving in a recklessly irresponsible manner as well. But that's a realisation that a lot of us have just kind of cottoned onto quite recently. But you're suggesting this has been going on systematically for quite some time.
I've been saying it for years and been vilified for it. It's not. See, at the next level down, you have the media. Some of my colleagues who aren't journalists, they're just cheerleaders. They cheerled the boom. If you look at the history of political correspondence in Ireland and you look at the very top of the political correspondence, there is a significant migration from being the chief political correspondent of one of our newspapers to being the chief press advisor of one of our government parties. So they're not on the outside, where journalists should be on the outside. You've got to know where you stand. And you stand on the side of disclosure, and you've got to disclose things to the people, right? Once journalists try to curry favour with politicians and become inclusive in their secrets, while it might elevate the journalist to what I would call the nose-tapping status, those fellows who go, if you knew what I knew, you'd be on the inside track. That's how it works in the door. So rather than having a media that exposes things and discloses things, what we have is a media that in many ways, not in all ways, but in some ways is very complicit. So it's not surprising that when the message gets down to the people, it is the housing boom is a good thing.